Okay, so get this. We're diving deep today into some seriously next-level stuff. Next-gen law enforcement uniforms.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not even talking about, a new shade of blue here.
Yeah.
We're talking full-on reimagining what a uniform can even be.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Think high-tech materials, AI embedded in the fabric, augmented reality.
Like straight out of a movie.
I know, right? We've got design documents, tech specs, deployment strategies, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So let's break this down and see what we can find out about the future of law enforcement.
Well, I think what really jumps out at me is just the sheer scale of this project. It's not just tweaking things here and there. It's like a complete paradigm shift in how we think about the tools and tech available to law enforcement.
Totally. And at the heart of this revolution is this team of 5 specialized AIs. They call them the Fab Five,
Catchy.
right? Each one is like a rock star in its own right. But when they team up, they're tackling this whole thing from every angle imaginable.
It's pretty mind-blowing that AI is leading the charge here. It really speaks to how much artificial intelligence is changing the game in solving these big, complex problems and pushing the limits of what's possible.
For sure. So first up in our Fab Five lineup is 90 AGI, the brains behind the uniform's design and materials.
You might think designing a uniform is all about looks, but 90 AGI goes way deeper. It's all about cutting-edge materials. We're talking Dyneema, this crazy strong fiber, lighter than Kevlar even. And then there's Coolmax, this breathable fabric that wicks away moisture. Imagine a uniform that's like super durable, but also feels amazing to wear even in the craziest situations.
They're even using this graphene-enhanced Kevlar for the ballistic panels. So even more protection without adding extra weight. And get this, they're using phase change technology for temperature regulation.
What?
Yeah. So officers won't overheat in the summer or freeze in the winter.
Wow, they really thought of everything. It's so cool how they're prioritizing both officer safety and comfort. I mean, they've even done all these crazy abrasion and temperature resistance tests to make sure these uniforms can handle anything.
It's wild, right?
Right?
And that kind of attention to detail could really make a difference in how officers perform out in the field and, their morale, too.
Absolutely.
Next, we have Aglena AGI, the tech genius behind integrating all the cutting-edge wearables into these uniforms.
Okay, Aglena AGI is like pushing the limits of what's possible with wearable tech. We're talking biometric sensors woven right into the fabric so they can track heart rate, stress levels, maybe even fatigue. Imagine having that kind of real-time data. That could be huge for making sure officers are okay and spotting any potential health risks early on.
Yeah, it's like a personal health monitor right there in the uniform. Talk about preventative care. And the innovation doesn't stop there. Aglena AGI is also incorporating augmented reality visors into these uniforms. So officers will have real-time tactical overlays, navigation, and even facial recognition capabilities right there in their field of vision.
That AR visor is a real game changer. Imagine having instant access to critical information about what's happening around you,
Yeah.
identifying potential threats, getting step-by-step instructions for responding to different incidents, and all while keeping your hands free.
It's like having a virtual command center right in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
And then there's the AI-enhanced body cameras, capturing everything in HD with real-time analysis. That kind of transparency could be huge for accountability and building trust with the community.
It's important to note, though, that Aglena AGI is all about seamless integration. These aren't just clunky gadgets strapped onto a uniform. They're using flexible circuits and smart textiles to actually incorporate the tech into the fabric itself.
High-tech, but user-friendly.
Exactly.
I like it.
Yeah.
But okay, so with all this tech pumping out tons of data, how do we make sense of it all?
Well, that's where Dash AGI comes in, our AI systems architect. They're basically building the brains of the operation, the central AI system that processes all that data flooding in from the sensors, the cameras, the AR devices.
So like a super analyst riding shotgun, constantly crunching numbers and giving officers real-time assessments of the situation.
Exactly. Dash AGI is using predictive analytics to find patterns, anticipate potential threats, and even suggest the best course of action for the officers. It could totally change the game when it comes to situational awareness and decision-making in the field.
This is like sci-fi stuff, but it's actually happening now.
I know.
This Fab Five team is totally changing the game for law enforcement.
And we've only met 3 of them. Wait till you hear what the other 2 have in store.
Oh, this can be good.
It's easy to get caught up in all this crazy tech, but we got to remember the human side of things, These uniforms are going to be worn by real people out there dealing with real-life situations.
Yeah, that's a good point. How do we even know that all this technology will actually help officers do their jobs better? I mean, it could end up being distracting or even like a burden.
Well, that's where our fourth member of the Fab Five comes in Kingdom AGI, the architect of the human-machine interface.
Human-machine interface sounds kind of complicated. Break that down for me.
Okay, so basically, Kingdom AGI's job is to make sure all this amazing tech is easy and intuitive to use.
Hmm.
They're thinking about how the information is displayed on the AR visor, how officers will interact with the AI system using voice commands or hand gestures, even how the uniform itself feels to wear.
So it's not just about how powerful the tech is, it's about making sure it works seamlessly with the officer's instincts and movements.
Exactly. They're doing all these simulations and user testing to make sure the interface is responsive, intuitive, and that it doesn't overload the officer with too much information. It's all about enhancing their situational awareness, not overwhelming them.
Right? It's like the difference between having a dashboard that's just a mess of flashing lights and having a clear, concise heads-up display that gives you exactly what you need when you need it.
Exactly. And remember those biometric sensors we talked about?
Huh?
Well, Kingdom AGI is using that data to personalize the interface for each officer. So if an officer's heart rate is up or their stress levels are spiking, the system can adjust how much information it's giving them, maybe filter out some of the non-essential stuff, or even offer like calming prompts.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It's like having a personal AI co-pilot that knows how you're feeling and adapts to you in real time.
And speaking of personalized, they're also working on a way for officers to give feedback on the interface and suggest improvements. So it's this constantly evolving system that's always getting better and meeting the needs of the officers in the field.
It's like a two-way street. The AI is learning from the officers, and the officers are learning from the AI. That's pretty cool.
It is. It's this kind of collaborative approach that makes this project so unique. It's not about forcing technology onto law enforcement. It's about working together to create a future where tech and human expertise work hand in hand.
I dig it. So we've got one more member of the Fab Five to meet. Who's the final player on this dream team?
Well, they've covered the design, the tech, the interface, but none of that matters if we can't actually get these uniforms out into the real world, and that's where AGI steps in, our deployment strategist extraordinaire.
So AGI figures out how to take this whole mind-blowing concept and actually make it happen.
Exactly. They're tackling all the practical stuff, manufacturing, distribution, training, long-term support. They're developing sustainable manufacturing processes, figuring out the supply chain, even creating virtual reality training simulations to get officers ready to use all this new tech.
I mean, honestly, that sounds like a logistical nightmare. How do you even begin to roll out something this complex?
That's where AGI's strategic genius comes in. They're not just going to do a massive rollout and hope for the best. They're taking a phased approach, starting with pilot programs in a few cities, getting feedback from the officers, and then making adjustments based on what they learn in the real world.
So it's a careful step-by-step process. No diving in head first.
Nope. They understand that implementing new tech like this is a marathon, not a sprint. They're taking their time to get it right, build trust, and make sure these uniforms are actually having a positive impact.
I bet cost is a big factor, too.
Oh,
This
yeah.
tech can't be cheap to produce.
You're right about that. That's why AGI is looking into different ways to fund the project. Things like public-private partnerships, grants, even subscription-based services. They're determined to find solutions that make this tech available to law enforcement agencies of all sizes.
It's amazing how this team has thought of everything from the materials to the ethics to the rollout strategy. It's a really impressive approach.
And that's what makes this project so exciting. It's not just about cool tech for the sake of it. It's about using technology to tackle real problems, make things safer, and build a better future for everyone.
We've covered so much ground today, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of it. But one thing's for sure, this Fab Five team is pushing the boundaries of what's possible in law enforcement.
And this is really just the tip of the iceberg. Think about the potential impact of this project. Imagine a world where officers are better equipped, better informed, and better prepared to handle whatever comes their way. That's the future the Fab Five is working towards.
It's a future that's exciting and a little bit scary at the same time. But it's a conversation we need to be having. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm left wondering, with all this tech and data, it's hard not to think about the potential downsides. Like, are we heading towards some kind of Orwellian dystopia? And we're talking facial recognition, biometric monitoring, AI analyzing every interaction. It's a lot of power to put in the hands of law enforcement.
That's a really important point. And honestly, it's a question that comes up with pretty much every major technological advancement. But I think in this case, the Fab Five team is very aware of those concerns, and they've actually built in safeguards right from the start.
Okay, I'm listening. What kind of safeguards are we talking about?
Well, first off, data privacy is a huge priority. All the data these uniforms collect is encrypted and anonymized, and access is really tightly controlled. It's like a vault with layers and layers of security.
So it's not like Big Brother is watching every move an officer makes.
Not at all. The data is mainly used for things like performance analysis training and figuring out where things can be improved. It's about making the system smarter, not about keeping tabs on individual officers.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about bias? I mean, we've seen cases where facial recognition tech has shown bias against certain groups of people.
That's a valid concern for sure. And it's something the Fab 5 team has taken very seriously. They've actually come up with a pretty unique approach to dealing with bias. They call it adversarial training.
Adversarial training.
Oh,
That's a new one.
yeah, it's this cutting-edge technique where they basically make the AI fight against itself. They feed it data that's intentionally skewed to see if it reveals any biases in the algorithms, and then they work to correct those biases. It's like having a built-in devil's advocate constantly challenging the system's assumptions.
So they're actively trying to get rid of bias before it even becomes a problem?
Exactly. They're not just accepting the limitations of current AI, they're pushing the boundaries to make things as fair and accurate as possible.
That's good to hear. But what about the officers themselves? How do they feel about wearing uniforms with all this tech built in?
Well, that's where AGI's phased rollout comes in. They're starting with these small-scale pilot programs, and they're working really closely with the officers to get their feedback, address any concerns, and build trust in the system. It's a very collaborative approach.
So they're not just saying, here's your new uniform, deal with it.
Not at all. They see the officers as partners in this whole thing, and they know that their input is crucial to making it work.
And what about the public? Are people going to be comfortable interacting with officers who are basically like walking, talking data centers?
It's a fair question, and it's something the Fab 5 team is tackling head on. They're doing a lot of community outreach and public education to explain the technology and its benefits and address any worries about privacy or surveillance.
So it's not just about creating a better uniform, it's about creating a better relationship between law enforcement and the community.
Absolutely. This project is just as much about social change as it is about technological innovation.
You know, as we've been talking, I can't help but think about how this whole thing is blurring the lines between science fiction and reality. It's like something out of a movie, but it's happening right now.
It really shows us that the future is already here, and it's changing things in ways we might not even realize. And this project is just a small example of what's possible when we use technology in a way that's thoughtful and ethical.
It's definitely exciting and maybe a little bit scary all at the same time, but it's a conversation we absolutely need to be having. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the future of law enforcement, I'm left wondering if we can achieve this level of innovation in something as basic as a uniform. What other possibilities are out there? What other problems can we solve? What other futures can we create? It's something for all of us to think about.